Oh, hello, everyone. How are you all doing? Thank you so much for joining us today for another interview in the Stay in the Game Relief Fund. As you probably know, because we won't stop talking about it, we are in the middle of a fundraiser because, we all need money to make our shit work. And right now is a really hard time for everyone. So a bunch of nonprofits, four to be exact, came together and said, hey, we're actually stronger together and we want to be here for the long haul. We want to be able to help the games industry and continue doing our work. So that's what we're doing. If you want to help us keep doing that work, please head over to givebutter.com/stayinthegame. You might actually already be on that page, so you could just click that little donate button. And if money's tight for you right now and you can't support us that way, please share this campaign with your networks or maybe do a charity stream for us. There are so many ways to participate that would really help us. And so that said, all this week we've been talking to the executive directors of each of the nonprofits that are a part of this campaign. And I'm so excited to have Kate Edwards with us today. Hi, Kate.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So Kate has been in the games industry for so long, and not to rub it in, but I think I say that because you have so many different arenas of expertise and the sort of this like long historical view of the industry that you bring to the work that you're doing right now as the executive director of the Global Game Jam.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's as of last month, April 2020, it's 27 years.
Oh,
it's been a
shit,
while.
I didn't even know it was that long.
Yeah, it's that long.
Amazing. Yeah. So, okay, let's, for those who might not know, what is a game jam?
So a game jam is essentially, it's a concept that was taken from music, where musicians get together and they just jam kind of casually, like, someone with a guitar and someone with some drums, and they just happen to hey, let's just do something together. And that's where the concept came from. And Susan Gold and the original founders of the Global Game Jam, Fawad Kosmood and Gorm Lai, basically came together as educators and said, hey, it'd be pretty cool if we just got people to jam together and make a game and kind of test out their game development skills. And that's how the idea got started.
Great. If you are joining us on Twitch, please, you can submit your questions in the chat for Kate and anything about the Global Game Jam, anything about the campaigns that we're doing or the fundraiser. So please feel free to just throw those in and we'll get to them. Okay. Game jams are pretty common now. We've seen a lot of them. Mm-hmm. There's game jams on boats. There's game jams on trains. There's game jams on all kinds of different things, which I think is sort of as someone, I consider myself like industry adjacent. Mm-hmm. I'm very much in this industry, but I don't make games. It's really exciting to me to see how people just coming together to play in a lot of ways, mm-hmm. right? And what could come out of this space. So what are some of the things that people get out of doing a game jam?
Well, I think for most people who get involved with a game jam, especially the Global Game Jam that happens in January, because it's such a massive event all around the world. When people come to a game jam, and there's a lot of things that they're doing. One is just camaraderie and, being with their friends and fellow students because a lot of people who often do game jams are students, but not always. But getting together with your friends and colleagues and being able to basically test out your skills together. You're not working. You're basically just kind of, casually making a game in a way, although it's not that casual because most game jams are time limited. So like the Global Game Jam is a 48-hour jam and you're jamming and creating a game to a specific theme. So it's actually pretty intense. But what people love about it is it's kind of focuses your creativity in a way that just kind of a normal workday or, time in your class at school would not do. And so with all the knowledge that you carry with you in that short amount of time, you're basically seeing what's going to come out of me. What kind of skills do I have? Where's my creativity going to take me? And it's a really cool process because it not only is a test of teamwork and collaboration, but it's also something of a test of your own ability to kind of get into the flow and to see how your creative energies work. Both individually and with other people. And the outcome of that is what, to me, is so exciting about it. I mean, being around this industry for so long, I work on tons of games. I've worked on all kinds of AAA titles and, everything in between. But what I love about Game Jam games is that they're a certain kind of purity to them, that this is creation in one of its purest, rawest forms. It's basically like right fresh out of the oven, like right out of their brains. And you're seeing exactly what, they were thinking about and how their mind was working in that moment. And that's pretty cool. It doesn't have to go through a whole big, post-production process of marketing and legal review and all that kind of stuff. It's like the idea is the idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea of a game jam also feels like so what you were talking about earlier got me thinking about some of my friends who are professional game designers who have been designing games for a long time. A game takes a long time to make, like a full structured, like commercial sellable game. And I have several friends who will make like hobby games on the side of their main games. And I feel like a game jam is such a way to just take a break, right? Like if you're just in the slog of making your game and you're in that part of the creative, and this is like for all creative people, you're in the slog of the creative process and you're just feeling like this isn't going to go anywhere and you're feeling burnt out. Like having that refresher, having a different community to do stuff with, I think can be, like getting involved in a game jam like this can help with that.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. I mean, in fact, I know a lot of people who have been professionals in the industry for quite a few years, and they still will participate in game jams. Sometimes it's a jam within their own company. Sometimes it's just something they do locally with friends. Sometimes it's involved like in a mentorship capacity with like a local school or university. But they love it because it does provide exactly what you said. It's sort of a mental reset. Your creative energies get refocused. You're not like constantly thinking about the same franchise or whatever you've been working on for the last 2 years or 5 years or whatever. And instead, you just kind of can release yourself from that constraint. And that's one of the things that's really cool about a game jam is that it has no constraint, and at the same time, like we do in the Global Game Jam, if we implement a theme that we expect everyone to make their game around, that is a constraint that can be exciting because the constraint is not coming from you, and it's not a demand that's being put on you by your company to like meet certain franchise demands or something. It's basically a way to focus you, because if you just have someone sit down and say, I want you to make me a game in 48 hours, it's like, about what?
Right.
Where am I supposed to even start?
Yeah.
Some people like that, though. They like just that complete open-ended possibilities, which is really cool. But I think for most people, they would like a little bit of direction, like, make me a multiplayer game or make a platformer or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a challenge, but it's a challenge in an exciting, creative way. I think that while there are some people that like that open-endedness, most people need some boundaries around like their, especially for play, for this kind of exciting play. So do game jam games ever become more than just an exciting weekend activity?
They actually do. I mean, that's actually one of the things that really excited me about taking on the role of running the Global Game Jam is that, I'm very familiar with the organization, especially since I used to run the International Game Developers Association, from which the Global Game Jam came back in 2012. It was conceived of within the Game Education Special Interest Group in the IGDA way back when. And so I was very familiar with the organization, and I always loved, being a part of it, and however I could. And so when I had the opportunity to take it over, one of the things that most excited me about it, and still does, is the incredible legacy of the Global Game Jam. Because for 12 years now, we've been holding this event, and there have literally been hundreds and hundreds of careers that got started because of the Global Game Jam. I mean, I can't count how many times when I travel all over the world, and especially exciting when I travel to emerging markets where people tell me that doing the Global Game Jam in this year or that year, that's what set me on my path to become a game developer, because I had my first opportunity to actually make a game, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do. But at the same time, a lot of the games that get created, because in any given year, like in 2020, back in January, we had over 9,600 games created in 48 hours. And
Wow.
so they're all sitting up there on the globalgamejam.org website for people to go take a look at. But some of these games, it's of course at the discretion of the developers, but they can take these games and develop them into something more, make it commercially viable. The game Super Hot, for example, which a lot of people know of, in the super cool VR game, that originated in the Global Game Jam some years back. And there's been several other games that also started kind of the kernel of the idea got formed during the Global Game Jam, and then the developers went on to develop into something commercially viable. And that's really cool. It's been sort of this incubation space for people for not only their careers but for games. For some companies got formed because of the teams that were involved together during the Global Game Jam decided to basically carry on with their collaboration. And I've even heard from people who said they met their life partner during the Global Game Jam. So that's a different form of relationship that got started.
Sure, absolutely. Well, so how does it actually work? Like, how does a global game jam work? Like, are people jamming from home? Are they going to local places in their cities?
Yeah, so the Global Game Jam in January has always been a live on-site event. And so basically we have site leaders. And so just to give you an idea of the scale, in 2020, we had 934 sites in 118 countries.
Wow.
So it's pretty big. We had over 48,000 people participating around the world during that weekend. And usually every year that there's been a game jam, I'm usually somewhere at one of the sites. This year I was in Haifa in Israel for the game jam, and I was in Egypt a couple years ago, and Tunisia before that, and Scotland, and all over the place. So it's been really exciting for me personally just to see how people do it, which, the actual experience is pretty much the same, but obviously every culture has its own little way of doing things and celebrating the whole game creation process. And that's been super cool to see. And so basically we, as the Global Game Jam organization, we spend our entire year orchestrating this, because as you can imagine, having to do all the logistics between all of those sites and all of those people signing up and everything is substantial.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Well, so how does the challenge get picked every year?
So the theme, we actually have a theme committee. And the theme committee is a mixture of industry and education professionals. And so they debate and come up with ideas, and they debate again. And they basically have a long list that they narrow down further and further. And eventually the final list of couple of themes that are among the options are presented to the board of directors of the Global Game Jam, and a one is selected. And that's it. And then it is kept very secret under lock and key because a lot of jammers, they want to know that theme going into it. But, obviously we don't want them to know because we don't want them to prepare before they start the jam. So that's usually one of the biggest moments of the Global Game Jam, is that moment on that Friday evening before they start, when they see the keynote video, and at the end of the video, they always find out what the theme is going to be.
Yeah.
And then as soon as it's announced, it's just exploding over social media. It's pretty fun.
Nice. That's great. It's just reminded me earlier this year, before we couldn't interact with other humans in person. Yeah. I did the equivalent of a film jam. It's like make a short film in a weekend, and cool. you wait and you're like, what is the theme gonna be? And you get it, and all of a sudden everyone hits the ground running, and it's probably very similar. I know that our team, the writers had some ideas about what they could be based on. What you come in with some ideas, but really you can't do anything until that's locked in. And so it's just a really exciting, energizing moment for sure. Yeah.
Exactly.
So one of the other things that I think about with game jams is the opportunity for folks who don't have experience in these spaces, folks who are traditionally marginalized in games, who, might feel like they don't really know if they fit into a game space, if, women, other marginalized folks, people of color, people from different parts of the world, even that don't traditionally get access to places like the Game Developers Conference or some of the bigger events where people do networking. Like, how does a game jam help those particular communities?
Well, that's another reason why one of the key reasons I took over the Global Game Jam as executive director is because that's one of the exciting things to me about this organization is our reach to a lot of underrepresented groups around the world is pretty extreme. And I love that about this org is that, and it for a couple of reasons. One is because it's absolutely needed in our industry in getting more and more underrepresented people to actually consider game development as a career path. And the other part of it is, the fact that it emphasizes the fact that game creation is becoming so democratized, and with the tools becoming free or readily available, we still have a technological barrier, certainly in a lot of markets where even getting a simple laptop is not easy, and so that's a barrier that we still need to address. But for people who are able to get access to some kind of equipment, which oftentimes in those markets, it might be through a school or university where the jam site is being held, they have an opportunity for the very first time to sit down and actually see what it means to make a game. And there's a lot of, help that they can get. And that's one of the things I also love about the Global Game Jam atmosphere is that you can go in there as a complete noob and you can still contribute because you still have ideas. And if you have interest in games and game development, you may not know how to code really well. You may not be the greatest artist in the world. Or you may not have perfected your skills at, Adobe Creation Suite or any of that stuff. But you've got the desire and you've got the interest. And so you can still contribute to a team. And while you're there, you also have that great opportunity to learn from other people. And, you may find out, and I know a lot of times people are really surprised the degree to which they were able to contribute to the creative process, even though they may not have had the core skills, they don't have that level of expertise yet. But that's one of the things that's super important about being involved in an event like this is that you have access to people who do know. And so you can treat them like mentors. And it's one of those things I love not only about this industry, but just about the jam as well, is that people really help each other out. It's not a competition. The Global Game Jam has never been a competition. It's always about teamwork and collaboration. And I think most people, they really take that to heart and they make sure that's emphasized when you're there. So people should not feel intimidated about showing up to one because it's like your knowledge and your skill, especially if you have any interest in games, and even if you're an avid game player, that means you have some understanding of how games work. And so you can bring your opinion and bring your insight into that creative process. And that's, to me, is really cool. And I often kind of underscore that by telling them, it's like, look, if a geographer like myself can work in this industry for 27 years, anybody can, trust me. You can find a way to work in this industry.
Yeah, nice. That's awesome. So... Okay, a little different direction. The Global Game Jam is an in-person event around the world, right? Folks are coming together, and right now, in-person events are not a thing that can happen safely. So what does that mean for y'all in looking forward?
Well, I mean, for 2021, we're definitely keeping our eyes open. Where the event is set for the end of January in 2021, the 29th to the 31st of January. And obviously, we're watching the situation carefully. We have not made a decision either way of what we're going to do, but we as an organization are absolutely looking into it seriously and going to have those initial conversations with site organizers and others, just kind of get a sense from them where they feel things are locally. Because obviously, we as a global organization, we can't make a call for local conditions. So we need to find out from the people who are there. Yes. But meanwhile, though, the Global Game Jam next event, which is our event in July, which is targeting younger people. So this is an event that was specifically designed to teach curriculum to 12 to 17-year-olds. So it's a 2-week event, which starts on July 13th and ends on the 24th. So that event is completely digital this year because we have to be, like most events during this pandemic. So it's going to be 1 week of instruction. So there will be like site leaders that will have groups of kids that will report to them, and there will be curriculum that we have already established. So they get to learn for a week about game creation and game design and all these other cool aspects. And then the following week is the actual jam part. And so during the jam from the 20th to the 24th, that's when they'll also have access to mentors from the industry that we'll connect them with online, who can look at their work or provide them with advice and feedback while this is all going on. So for us, this is actually going to be the first time we've ever done an online version of a global game jam event. So it's going to be somewhat experimental, but I think it's going to go really well.
Oh, that's awesome. What is that something that is centralized instruction, or is that going to be like, are there different sites in which these students are coming into?
Well, what we're doing is that normally we would have had like a physical site, like a school, and it kind of works like a summer camp kind of atmosphere. But this time, a lot of our jam leaders, the site leaders, they tend to be educators. They tend to be teachers. This year, I imagine we will probably have some parents because we're doing it digitally. And so basically, they're going to be responsible for a group of kids that they will connect with online. And so they will basically set the pace of the curriculum, which is already established. It's a lot of video-based curriculum that has been created by a whole bunch of educators and organizers that are part of the Global Game Jam Next team. And so they'll use that curriculum to do the teaching and instruction and kind of help the kids through exercises and all that. And of course, again, doing it all online. And then the following week, like I said, we'll orchestrate the actual jam part of it.
Nice. Can anyone sign up for, like, can any youth sign up for that?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
So we haven't started the youth signups yet, but right now, as of yesterday, the 12th of May, we actually started the registrations for jam leaders, the site leaders, and for people who want to be a mentor.
Oh, awesome. Oh, that's great. My first thought was this is going to be great for parents to give their kids something to do. Because I know a lot of parents are struggling right now with, having to transition to homeschooling, having to entertain their kids. And like, what a cool, this is 2 weeks of just productive, exciting, interesting distraction. Like, what kid wouldn't want to make a game,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this really is a great opportunity. I think it's even more of an opportunity now during this whole lockdown pandemic situation because, like you said, I think a lot of parents are getting more and more desperate for something for their kids to do. And considering the fact that in some locations they will probably still be in some form of lockdown even in July, this is a great chance for the kids to do something. It is a form of escapism. No doubt they've probably already been playing a lot of games up until now when they've had some free time. And so now's a chance to actually see if they would like making one. And for some, this may really catch on. They may find out that this really is something they might want to pursue for the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. All right, Kate, that was... Well, I'm just so excited about what's happening here. The ways that I think our industry and these organizations that support this industry are responding to the moment, right? Like we're all kind of scrambling to figure out how to stay in connection and how to stay in community and how to be creative and vibrant in a rather difficult time. So like, I love this idea. I think that this is really exciting. I think, excuse me, sorry. If folks want to learn more about the Game Jam or the Game Jam Next for youth, where would they find out about that?
So for Global Game Jam organization, they can go to globalgamejam.org. And for the GGJ Next that I just mentioned, it's ggjnext.org.
Great.
And they should go check it out. And, I can be found online for questions or, ping us about something.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us, whether you are on Twitch or you're over on our Give Butter page. As you know, we need money. That's what's happening here. We're not going to beat around the bush. It is really important. So Kate is one of the organizations that is a part of the Stay in the Game Foundation, a relief fund. I don't know why I said foundation, which is the Global Game Jam, which we've just been talking about for the last 30 minutes or so. Take This. We talked to Eve yesterday, who runs Take This. And tomorrow we'll be talking to Nika from the IGDA Foundation. So, and us, obviously, the Games Hotline. We are all coming together to try and respond to these the lockdown and how it's affecting our communities, trying to make sure that our nonprofits can stay flourishing into the future and do the important work of supporting mental health, supporting diversity, being creative, doing all this important stuff. So please consider dropping in a donation at givebutter.com/stayinthegame. And if money's tight right now, we totally understand, but maybe you can share it with your communities. Maybe you can do some streams for us. So please spread the word as much as you can. Kate, thank you so much for being on. Y'all can join me tomorrow. Sorry. Y'all can join me tomorrow at 2 p.m. Pacific time when we talk to Nika Noor all about the International Game Developers Association Foundation and the work that they are doing. So thank you all. We'll see you soon.
Great. Bye.